It is my firmly held belief that it's a mistake to have firmly held beliefs. Keep that in mind for what I'm about to say. There are worse ways to die than battle. At least in battle, someone's watching. Odin, Freyja, someone decides if your death meant something. But the sea? The sea doesn't judge you. It doesn't honor you. It doesn't even remember you. It just takes you. And the Norse knew that, which is why they gave the ocean a name, Ron. But here's the problem. Every other god of the dead in the Norse cosmology has a destination, a hull, a structure, a purpose. Ron has a net and nothing beyond it. So what happens to the people she takes? Where do the drowned actually go? Because once you start pulling on that thread, the entire system of death in Norse mythology stops being mythology, and it starts looking more like administration. This is I Am Heathen, and so can you.
You learned enough.
I am heathen.
And so can you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to I Am Heathen, and so can you. After 2 long weeks, and after 2 long, annoying weeks of battling with my allergies, we're back. I've been thinking a lot lately about the direction I've wanted to take this show, about what I want to do with the common hearth, how I want to be a beacon in a world so heavily populated by bullshit. And today, we're going to tackle a pretty interesting topic for me. Justification of UPG. Now, I have said many a time, and I will say many a time more, that all forms of UPG are valid. Unless Odin commands you to rob a liquor store, well, you're on your own if that's the case. I mean, who's really out there running around going, well, I knocked over that liquor store because the All-Father told me to take that bottle of Louis the 13th. You and I both know that ain't ever gonna happen. Instead, we're gonna look to something that is so very omnipresent in our lore and omnipresent in the spheres of influence of our deities: death. There are many ways to die in the old stories, and the Norse, being a people with a practical relationship to mortality, spent an extraordinary amount of time thinking about what happens after the breathing stops. Death in the Viking Age was not theoretical. It was not something politely sanitized behind hospital curtains and paperwork. It was immediate, messy, and deeply, deeply personal. A man might die beneath the screaming iron of a shield wall. He might die slowly beneath winter illness, fading in a timber hall while family whispered prayers to gods who might or might not be listening. He might die beneath the hooves of a horse, or the falling weight of a collapsing roof beam. Or he might die in the most terrifying place imaginable, the sea. Anyone who stood on the shore of the North Atlantic during a storm understands, or at least could somewhat envision, why the Norse imagined the ocean as something alive. The water doesn't merely move, it roars, it crashes, it devours. It becomes a black, churning organism with moods that can shift from generosity to violence in the span of a single wave. The people who built their lives around longships and coastal trade knew this better than anyone. Their world was connected by water, and that water could kill them without hesitation. So the Norse built a cosmology that answered a very simple question: who gets you when you die? The answer is surprisingly that several gods are involved in the process. The afterlife isn't chaos, it's administration. The prestige dead. Let's start with the most glamorous of corpses, the exquisite corpses, the ones who make the highlight reels of Norse mythology. The war dead. Now, mind you, before we hit on this, there is a translation or two that says the weapon dead, and for the sake of argument for this episode and any other episodes coming that discuss death, we're sticking with the war dead because in my head, the weapon dead implies that any farmer who gets impaled on a pitchfork is on his way up to Valhalla to become an Einherjar, and that just does not sit right with me. In the Poetic Edda, we're told that those who fall in battle are divided between two divine collectors. Odin receives half the slain warriors in Valhall, the famous Hall of the Slain where the Einherjar gather to feast and train for Ragnarok. Freyja receives the other half in Folkvanger, a realm less thoroughly described, but clearly operating under the same basic principle. These warriors are not simply dead, they're chosen. The distinction here is crucial. And like I said, modern translations are often going to render the phrase used in the sources as the weapon dead. Technically is accurate, but it's spiritually misleading. And like I said, no farmers getting speared through the gut with pitchforks are on their way up to become the Einherjar. It's an interpretation that falls apart the moment you think about it for longer than 10 seconds. The Norse weren't idiots. Their cosmology reflects a system of values centered around honor, reputation, and courage. The dead claimed by Odin and Freyja are not simply the stabbed, they're the war dead. People who faced their fate in battle, people who met death with steel in their hands and their names still intact. And there is a reason Odin gathers them. He's building an army. Ragnarok, the end of the world, is not merely a mythological apocalypse. It's the final war of the cosmos. Odin spends centuries preparing for it by gathering the finest warriors who have ever lived. Every day they train, every night they feast, and when the world burns, they will march beside him. The afterlife in this context is a recruitment strategy. We're going to take a minute to talk about something that's real important to me. And this is where things get interesting. Because everything we've been talking about, systems, thresholds, what happens when you cross from one state into another, this doesn't just apply to death. It applies to how you live. There are moments in a man's life where something ends, not dramatically, not all at once, but piece by piece. older versions of you burn away, and some people ignore that process. They numb it, they run from it, or they pretend it's not happening. But others step into it. That is where Surtur's Chosen exists, not as a brand, not as an aesthetic, but as recognition. That fire is a necessary part of becoming. Surt, in the old stories, doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't negotiate. He arrives, and what can't survive him simply doesn't. Surtur's Chosen is for the people who understand that, who doesn't just survive change, but it allows change to reshape them. People who are willing to be tested without needing an audience for it. No performance, no mythology for social media. Just the quiet understanding that becoming something better usually requires losing something first. And if that makes sense to you, and you want to embrace that freedom, you already know what this is. Check out Surtur's Chosen MM. That's SURTRS, Chosen MM, on Facebook and TikTok. Tell them Einar sent you. And now, back to the show. The problem with the drowned is a very simple one. Because even in a culture so mired in warfare, not everybody dies on the battlefield. Many die at sea. And the Viking Age was this extraordinary period of maritime movement. Long ships crossed vast distances, linking Scandinavia to the British Isles, Iceland to Greenland, and even the shores of North America. The ocean is what made this world possible. And it also killed an enormous amount of people. Storms would come suddenly. Ships would capsize. Men fell overboard. Entire crews vanished into the black, cold depths. The Norse had a mythological explanation for this. Her name was Ran. Ran is the wife of the sea giant Aegir, and together they rule the ocean's depths. While Aegir is often depicted as a gracious host who entertains the gods beneath the waves, Ran is associated with a far darker aspect of the sea. Her defining attribute is a net. When sailors fall into the ocean, the stories say that Ran catches them with it. If you sit and think about it, it's a brutally elegant metaphor. The ocean isn't just drowning you, it's collecting you. This creates this tidy three-part system of death within Norse mythology. Odin and Freyja claim the war-dead shore. Ran claims the sea-dead. And Hel gets everybody else. At least, that's how the system appears on the surface. But mythology rarely, if ever, stays tidy for long. And here's where the problem begins. There's no hall. Odin has Valhalla, Freyja has Folkvangar, Hel has Helheim. These are places with structure. They have halls, gates, inhabitants, and they're defined with mythological roles. But Ran? Ran has a net, and that's it. Nowhere in the surviving sources do we find a Hall of the Drowned. There's no underwater Valhalla where sailors feast. There's no armies of the sea dead preparing for Ragnarok. In fact, the Drowned appeared nowhere in the final battle. Ragnarok is this massive mythological war. Giants march, monsters awaken, and the dead rise from Helheim. Loki sails to the battlefield aboard Naglfar, the terrible ship built from the nails of the dead. But the drowned? The drowned are conspicuously absent. If Ran collects souls, the mythology never explains what she does with them. This is the theological equivalent of discovering your H&R Block office that collects your tax money every year, just puts it in a safe and doesn't do anything with it. Which means we have to turn to other sources for potential answers, and I think our greatest point of reference here lies in the sagas, specifically in Erbygja saga. In the story of Thorstein, Codbiter, a man who senses that his death is approaching. Before departing on his final voyage, he distributes valuables among those around him. And when asked why he's giving away his possessions, he explains that he must prepare payment for someone. Specifically, he says that he must pay the cold bride. That phrase should make every scholar of Norse religion stop and stare. The cold bride? Who exactly is that? Two candidates immediately emerge. Ron, whose icy ocean depths could easily justify the title, or Hel, the queen of the dead and the lady of Helheim. The sagas don't immediately clarify which goddess Thorstein has in mind. Instead, he dies. Thorstein's ship is destroyed in a violent storm. He and his crew drown. The sea claims him, or so it would appear. But Thorstein's story doesn't end there. He awakens, not underwater, but on dry land. Nearby burns a fire, and beside the fire sits a hooded woman. She gestures for him to follow, and together they walk. Eventually, they reach the walls of a great city. Here, the woman performs one of the strangest acts in Norse literature. From her bag, she removes the body of a decapitated rooster and throws it over the wall. Moments later, the rooster is alive and crowing on the other side. Death has crossed a boundary, and life continues beyond it. Thorstein has arrived in the realm of the dead, but something about the setting is deeply important, and given where Thorstein died, deeply unsettling. There's no ocean. There's no underwater palace, no sea kingdom. Instead, we just see walls, gates, a city. Architecture that looks suspiciously like Helheim. Archaeological evidence suggests that sailors did indeed attempt to appease these spirits. Coins cast into waves, offerings thrown into the water, prayers whispered before voyages, and it's highly likely that these practices involved Ran, because they resemble attempts to avoid death, not enter an afterlife within her domain. Ran appears less like a ruler of the dead and more like the dangerous threshold through which the drowned must pass. And that's where Hel comes in. As we all know, Hel is the keeper of the dead, and Hel appears everywhere in the sources as the ruler of the underworld. She governs Helheim. She receives the dead. She hosts Balder and Nanna after their deaths with elaborate hospitality. She functions not as a villain, but as the administrator of mortality. Somebody has to manage the dead, and Hel appears to be doing the paperwork. Now, This is the point where the cautious academic would politely conclude that the sources are inconclusive. I currently have double middle fingers up at my microphone because I'm not a cautious academic. Instead, I'm going to propose a simpler theory. Ron may not represent a separate destination for the dead. She may simply be an aspect of hell. The ocean catches the drowned, but the underworld receives them. Ron gathers, hell rules. Two names, one system. Reciprocity with death. For modern heathens, this interpretation opens interesting possibilities. Those who live by the sea may cultivate reciprocity with Ron, honoring the power that governs storms and tides. Those who practice ancestor veneration may cultivate relationship with Hel, very much like I do, honoring her as the guardian of the dead. These practices aren't contradictory, mind you. They may represent different faces of the same divine mechanism. You know, every single culture, for the most part, has gods who guard the threshold between life and death. Hell, Hades, Anubis, Santa Muerte, the Morrigan. They're not villains, they're custodians. And if today stirred something in you, if this discussion tweaked your thinking, share this episode. Argue with me about it. Let's discuss it. Theology grows stronger when it's wrestled with openly. And somewhere beneath the waves, if the old stories are to be believed, a goddess with a net still may be listening. Now, like I said, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't only just consider subscribing to I Am Heathen and So Can You. I am building an org. It's called The Common Hearth. It's for people who are absolutely sick to death of the everyday, overdramatic mess that pervades pagan spaces on social media. And if you'd like to find us, please look for us on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at The Common Hearth. Now, I'm going to kick the theme of today's episode back to all of you. Is Ron her own goddess of the drowned, or an aspect of hell? And let's getting a little bit more broadly. Are you a follower of a death god? Have you had experiences with death gods across other traditions? We can include hell here too. And if you have, let us know in the comments. Let us know on our social media platforms. And no, I'm not asking you to take my UPG at face value. You shouldn't. But I am asking you to follow the logic, because when the sources give you a system and one piece of that system doesn't resolve, you have two options. Ignore it or investigate that shit. And when you investigate it, when you look at the sagas, the archaeology, and the structure of how the Norse understood death, a pattern starts to emerge. Ron doesn't keep the dead, she gathers them. In hell, she receives them. These aren't two destinations, it's one system with two functions. And if that's true, then what you're looking at isn't contradiction, it's mechanism. So here's where I want you, not an agreement, but an engagement. Like I've harped on before, drop your take in the comments, because I really want to know. Because we have to remember, my friends, that theology does not grow in silence, and it never will. Like I said, follow us at the Common Hearth at I Am Heathen for more deep dives like this, because we will be dropping episodes every Thursday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and following with our most beautiful tradition. If you have a drink, and if you don't, go get one, raise that sumbitch up high and repeat after me. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the ancestors, hail the spirits, and most importantly, hail yourselves. Keep the fires burning, my friends.